Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar presentation today. And our discussion today will be about invoicing options with Infinity. It's very important to point out some of the different changes that have come to Infinity. I want to make sure that everybody out there has a good understanding of these new features before you go live. So let's go through the invoicing module to begin with. We're going to go to invoicing, and we're going to go right into the invoices module. Within the Invoices module, we'll see that we have still our View mode. View mode shows us anything that's already on an invoice. We still have our Add mode and our Modify mode. Really, all these buttons in the upper right-hand corner are what they were before. A change to the process here, though, I accidentally selected Find, is we can select a patient, and when we go into Add mode, you'll see that Add is a little bit different than what it was in the past. With Add mode, you have a couple of different sections here over on the left-hand side of the screen, as well as some different tabs across the top of the screen. We'll start talking about the patient section. With the patient section, you can choose multiple patients under the same client. So that would be if we had desktop clients selected and then picked Oscar and Tankette. The nice thing about this is if we have the same two puppies in for the exact same exam and everything else, the vaccines are the same, we might as well select each one of the puppies that are involved and then go over and select the exam, save it to the invoice. That'll duplicate the item to both of the different patients. So it's a real time saver. In the past, you would have had to have added everything to one of the patients and then copy over to another patient, and that just takes an extra couple of clicks to do, and sometimes it gets forgotten. Here it's a simple check of one more checkbox if you have a second patient, and then proceed with adding items to the invoice. In addition to the multiple patients for the desktop client, we have the ability to pull up a referral source. We can pick the referral source and see anybody that was referred based on that referral source. We have the ability to select stable, so we pick the stable, pick every of the horses that are at a stable, or trainer, all of the horses that are being trained by the same trainer. This helps when we have our equine practitioners who go out into the field, they go to a stable, and they don't want to go from one account to the next to add items onto an invoice. It's just much easier to pick multiple patients at the same stable, even if they're owned by different clients, add items to the invoice under their accounts, and that way, again, you're going to save a lot of time and make sure that you're not missing out on charges for the different horses that you're working with. Now, on the Options tab, you have the ability, if you don't have referral sources or stables or trainers, you can turn off each of those options. That is an option that you have on the Options tab. So now when I use the drop down here, I don't really have any other choices. I just have Desktop Client, where I can choose multiple patients under the same account. Under the Options tab, we also have the ability to only show active patients. We have the ability to include deceased patients if we want to, and we can have the owner name if we want to. Now, the owner name comes into play when we have multiple clients involved. So usually for the stables and the trainers and the referral sources. You pick one of those, you see a list of 75 different patients, and you don't know who the owner of those patients is. So the Options tab, going into select that the owner name appears, would definitely help in that situation. If you're in a situation where you only have the active desktop client, you don't have any other clients that are possible, you could choose that you don't show the owner name, and now it just cleans up this screen a little bit. It doesn't have Connolly Frank next to the name of the patients. Alright, so we have selected multiple patients underneath the same client record. The next thing to do would obviously be to add items onto the invoice. So the way we do that is we slide over to the right portion, or probably more the middle portion of the screen, and we make sure that we have the product tab selected, and then choose the product selector right here, and we can type to search by name, code, or barcode. Now, I recommend actually, if you've been using drop-down boxes for a while, I recommend actually switching over to search for matching entry when you're doing your invoicing. It makes the searching for items much easier than using the drop-down. And I'll show you why. Let's switch back over to the autocomplete and click OK. And the way I did that is I clicked on this pencil, selected autocomplete, and now we'll hit OK to bring back our drop-down boxes. Now there are some additional tabs across the top of the screen, and this will make sense as I go through here. We have the loading of Profit Center, storage location, super mode. We have a tab for notes and medical records, as well as for billing. In order to load the item appropriately, we have to select it and then choose the select option or hit enter on your keyboard. By doing one of those two things, you take the product and move it down into the edit portion of the screen. Also make it so that the Profit Center storage location, notes, and billing information has been populated. So that requires that additional step of hitting select or hitting enter on the keyboard. If we instead had the search for matching entry on, and I wanted to find, we'll just say exam, I can type in exam, hit enter. It does give me a list of all the different items that have exam in the word. So in the first, 5 items, the word exam is actually buried within the name of that item. But then we have other options for exam that we can go down and select. When you hit enter on that item, that's what moves it down to the bottom portion of the screen. So again, click in the search, type in your exam. If you know your code, just type in the code. So if we know that the code is E304, we could type in E304 and hit enter, and that puts that item right down onto the active section. Also populates the notes, billing, Profit Center, storage location, and super mode settings. So now that we have the exam on the screen, exam brief, we have our quantity, our price, our sales tax, employee, date performed, time performed, and the ability to change the discount. All of those settings are what we want them to be, and we're happy with what we see here. We can hit enter once again or click apply. And because I have both Oscar and Tankette selected, we will see the exam brief appear on both Oscar and Tankette, just like that. Now I can move on to another item. I can look for the rabies vaccination. Type in rabies. This gives everything that has the rabies vaccination or the rabies name within it. So I can come in and select the item, hit enter again, and this will now ask me for a tag number, but adds the rabies vaccination to both of the patients. So definitely a time saver when it comes to selecting multiple patients and then multiple products. Now, I've mentioned briefly that there are selections now on the product ad screen for Profit Center and storage location. Profit Center, we've had many requests where you have a veterinary practice that has departments. You've got the eye department, you've got the skin department, you've got the pharmacy, you've got all sorts of different departments within the practice. Well, when you've got all those different departments and you have different exam charges for each of those departments, maybe the charge for the exam is the same, but we want to know that this time we did it in the eye department, this time we did it in the skin department, next time we do it in the pharmacy area. So what's nice about the Profit Center now is that you can name the Profit Centers after each of your departments. And instead of having a different charge, because for tracking purposes that was really the only way to do it, you'd have to have an exam for each one of the departments and add that exam to the appropriate department when it was being performed. So instead we rename the Profit Centers after the department and make sure that we have the correct Profit Center selected before adding products onto an invoice. We can have it set that if the checkbox is checked here to use the product setting, the system will always look to the product setting first. So if I type in exam, I pick my exam, it sets this to outpatient services and vaccines. But I could, if I want to, use the drop down to pick a different one before hitting the apply button, and now the Profit Center would be set to pharmacy. If I want pharmacy to be the Profit Center for every item that I add to the invoice from this point forward, because I'm working out of the pharmacy right now, I'd uncheck the checkbox here for use product setting, choose my pharmacy, hit apply. It will remember pharmacy so that the next time I pick something and apply it, here I had surgeries attached, so I'm just going to select none there. There we go. It has assigned those items to the pharmacy. To get back to using the product setting, we click the product setting, search for an item. It'll change what's in the drop-down box based on what the default setting is for the product. We also have the ability to pull from different storage locations. By default, the workstation storage location setup and workstation preferences is where we're pulling from. But let's just say I'm sitting in the pharmacy, but we ran out of stock in the pharmacy. And I know that if I go up to the front desk and grab inventory from the front desk to sell to the customer, that I try and sell it from this workstation, it's going to put my pharmacy out of stock. It's going to put it into the negative. But it's really not going into the negative. We're instead pulling it from the front desk. So here, if we have different storage locations set up, we could choose to pull the item from the front desk for that one time, so that we're keeping track of the fact that we have actually removed those items from the front desk as opposed to from the pharmacy. So definitely some real time savers with the profit center and the storage location for practices that have been asking for those features for a while, and now you'll have them. I keep alluding also to the super mode. Super mode's been in the system for a while. It's just this is the spot where the super mode information went. You choose the super mode, choose your product, and whatever the super mode is, the pricing will adjust accordingly. Let's move over to the Notes and Medical Record tab under Notes MR. This is where we can put in any kind of additional note that we'd like to have appear on the invoice as a footnote for the item that we are working with. So a good example here would be if you put an exam in, or you have a vaccine. Maybe the better example is a vaccine. And there's some sort of a side effect with the vaccine. You might print off your drug information sheet from VPR, or you might have a take-home instruction for that item. But you could also put a note under the Note tab. The notes that you see here are defaulted to whatever we have set up as our invoice note. And then you can come in and add on to that invoice note, make changes to it, and that's all done on this tab. So it gives you the ability to add notes during the invoicing process on the Notes tab. And finally, we've got the Billing tab. Billing is for split billing purposes. If I go over to split billing, we're going to see that this patient is not split with anybody. It's Frank Connolly's dog, Tank Dad. Well, if I wanted to, let's say, split the charges with one of Frank Connolly's friends, we could definitely come in here and say we're going to set up split billing and do this on the fly for this specific item. We don't even have to do it across the board as a uniform change to split billing. We can just make that change to the split billing on the fly as we add one item. And that's going to come into play more so, I think, with equine practices where you have multiple people that own the same horse, and we want to make sure that they each are charged the right amount. But just showing you here during the invoicing process that you can do split billing on the fly per product per patient. Now when we're all set, all ready to go with the items, we have the ability to go to OK and then conclude and proceed with concluding items the way that we always have. Taking in payments, placing balances on accounts, doing your invoice discounts, and so on. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time discussing the whole conclude process because those are really options that you've had for a while, and I really want to focus more on the changes that are a part of the program. So we're going to cancel out of conclude. Another thing I wanted to point out that has been confusing some people, and that confusion comes in when we have something like a TPR. TPR has a $0 cost. It's something that really gets put onto a treatment plan usually to track how often we're doing the temperature, pulse, and respiration. Now, when I hit apply, it doesn't show up on the invoice. In the past, it always showed up on the invoice. So where is it? Well, we have a setting over in the pencil to only display products that will print on the invoice. We have told the TPR that because it's a $0 item, we don't need to see it on the invoice, it's not going to print on the invoice. And if it's not going to print on the invoice, it also will not show up at the bottom of the screen. If I choose that I want to show the item, I would say to not only show items that are on the invoice, meaning show everything, hit OK, and we'll see that the TPR gets added to both of the patient's records. Anything that has a $0 amount will appear at the bottom of the screen, but still, that item will not print as a part of the invoice because we've told it that if it's a $0 item, not to print on the invoice. Okay, I want to make sure it's very clear that all these settings that we talked about here for patient settings, options, the product tab, notes, MR, billing, all of those options are available within estimates. They're available when we go into the setup of products. Any place that we work with products in the program, we are going to see the screen that you see right here, And I do recommend switching over to the binoculars, because I believe that the binoculars makes it a little bit easier to search for what you're looking for and add those items to the invoice faster. It does require that extra click or that extra enter to add something down to an invoice if you have the other option selected as opposed to the search for matching entry. So that brings us to the end of our presentation here today on invoice options. I wanted to just make sure again that it was very clear the changes that are coming with the new version of the program. If you do think of any questions after the fact, don't hesitate to give us a call here at Impromed at 1-800-925-7171. I want to thank everybody for taking the time out of your day to come out and watch a presentation here today, or to download the presentation and watch it at your convenience off of the iCam. If you have any questions, once again, 1-800-925-7171. Otherwise, I hope everybody out there has a great day, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Bye-bye.